Hello there, my crafty friends. It's Ashley Pfeiffer, the maker behind Stamped AF. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Canada, and I have a fantastic card to show you this week. So it is a shaker card using the Honeybee bundle and then the sentiment from Wiggle Worm. So this is going to take a little bit, so let's just get down to it. I think this time I'm going to put some more sequins in. There's not a lot of room to shake it, so we might modify a couple of things, but I'm going to show you what you need to make this gorgeous little card. So we need the classic label punch to do our sentiment. For inks, we just need StazOn, Memento, and Versamark. And you'll see why. We need a little piece of gold glimmer paper. We need a 4 by 5.5 piece of gold shimmer. Gold metallic foil. We need the second from the largest of the stitch nested dies. We need some of the Golden Honey Specialty DSP. And this is, sorry, if I said the gold foil was 4 by 5.5, it's actually 3.5 by 5.5. This one is 4 by 5.5. And then we need a side folding A2 size card base. Whisper White is what I used. Something optional would be the Coastal Weave embossing folder, and you can see I've got a little piece of foil stuck to that. We need a little piece of vellum because we're going to emboss our beehive, and then probably window sheet, and then probably the most surprising is Shrinky Dinks. Now this doesn't look much different from the window sheets, but trust me, there is heavier texture. It can be hard to tell which is which, and you could use Shrinky Dinks as a window sheet, but I'm trying to keep these separate. So I'm going to show you this one more time so you can see the gold foil with the Coastal Weave embossing folder. You can see the hive. We also need some sequins, but I'll show you which ones those are later. Now with my bees in this one, I used a glue dot just to keep them down, but we might let them go loose this time so there's a little more to shake. So let's get started, shall we? So I went ahead and I stamped and die cut most of my bees. So I want to show you the process of how to stamp it and how to shrink them. So we need our StazOn ink for this. I'm going to get that big bee from the Honeybee stamp set. We have enough of the small ones. And then I'm going to show you how to shrink them all 6 times. So ink up your stamp using StazOn. Now you need to be very careful because this moves very easily. So put it down, kind of give it a little bit of a rock, and lift up, okay? And then I suggest using a baby wipe right away. And if you're not filming a video, you can use your StazOn cleaner, but this will at least get that StazOn off in the meantime. What I usually do is clean it right away, but if you're in the middle of something, a baby wipe will suffice. But since I'm not going to be stamping anymore with StazOn tonight, then let's clean this one. So other than the sentiment, that is the only stamping we have. So I'm going to let that sit for just a minute. I'm going to close up my StazOn. You do not want to leave this open. Going to grab my die for the large bee. Now this isn't the one that cuts out all those little detailed pieces. This is the one that cuts out the bee. Just line up those wings. Put down your washi tape and put it through your die cutting machine. So the other bit of cutting we need to do is our, I want to call this the beehive, but this is the honeycomb. So we're going to cut that with our gold glimmer paper. I'm going to line this up so that I can cut this and my hive hopefully at the same time. I just started using a Gemini Junior, so we'll see how it goes. Now for my beehive, I don't know if I just have a faulty stamp or if my pressure is off, but I find I have to use my foam mat for this one. Otherwise I don't get a perfect image. You can see it's a little bit lighter on that side, and it happens every time. So I'm gonna press a little bit harder. I'm using crushed curry ink, and I'm going to emboss it with clear embossing powder. So we'll ink that up real good. Give it a good solid press, and I'm doing that rocking motion. See, it always goes a little bit light on that side for me. Now this isn't Versamark, so you don't have as much time to get your powder on as you do if it was Versamark. Oh yeah, so we don't need Versamark for this. My mind immediately went to Versamark when I said that I was doing heat embossing, but I forgot we use crushed curry with clear powder. So we don't need our Versamark. Okay, so I'm going to set, because I'm heat setting on vellum, I'm going to use my low setting. So I'm just going to let that heat up and clean up a tiny bit. There we go. So usually I would let that cool before I die cut it, but I'm going to use this one over here. Now, because I'm using a Gemini Junior, I am taping down everything. I'm still getting into the habit of using it, because when I did finally break down and buy one, I didn't stop using my Big Shot. So I've moved my Big Shot kind of out of the way, so I forced myself to get used to it. So with the Gemini Junior, if you're not familiar, you place your dies facing up. So you're cutting into that top plate. So this is pretty warped. But we're going to send all three through there at one time. And I have to remember not to talk when the die cutting machine is working. Okay, so now we have all of our die cut pieces ready. We can set that aside. Got some of my glimmer pieces that are hanging onto the plate. So we've got our big bee. Let's call her the queen bee. You know there can only be one queen in a hive, which is why I only have one of this one. Now I have to tell you, when I was using my Big Shot earlier today, I did find that going back and forth with a die like this was necessary, but you can also use a paper piercing tool or take your pick tool to get it out intact. Now, I'm pretty sure that was the right side. That was the side I stamped on, so I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to get my honeycomb off of there. And I'm going to take my dark Mango Melody and test it. Make sure that it doesn't make that ink run, because if I do this on the other side with an alcohol marker, it's going to smear and that stays on is going to come off. So you don't want that. So if you color on the back side, it doesn't mess up your coloring. Okay, just gonna put my dies back. If you follow me, you know that I lost a die recently and was lucky enough to get a replacement, but I don't want it to happen again, so my dies have to go back into their home ASAP. So everyone is safe at home. Clean that stamp and put it back. I don't know about you, but I can't work in a mess. So you'll find that every time I start my heat tool, I do like the 10-second tidy. I can't work in a mess. It zaps my creativity. If you are the same, I would love to hear it. If you can work in a mess, I'd love to hear it. We're all different. Okay, so now we need our heat tool again. So I'm going to kind of move these guys off to the side. I'm going to take my paper piercing tool and hold on to just a little piece there. I want to have a clear block at the ready. So if you saw that, the reason you need your paper piercing tool is to hold it in place. So there's our queen bee. Now I'm just going to speed through the rest of these guys. You definitely want to hit it with that clear block to get it to lay flat at the end. But I'm just going to speed through this and just enjoy. Just when you think it's wrecked, it falls flat and it's perfect. So fun. Okay, so there we go. We've got all our little bugs. You always want to color before you die cut. The color really intensifies as they shrink, but also you'd have a really hard time getting into those tiny spaces. So color it when it's at full size. Okay, so we are pretty much ready for assembly. So we can bring in our card base. And we can set that piece down. I am making it a little wider so that we can see more of that hexagon paper. Just going to glue that down. My grid paper is a little bit warped from all of that heat. So now what we're going to do is we're going to dry fit this because I don't want to have my honeycomb sticking out beyond the hive. It's just not realistic, is it? So we need to cut off these 3 pieces. So all we're going to do is trim along the edge. Do we want that one gone? Yeah, I think it's okay like that. So we just removed those 2. So now we're going to just assemble, or we're going to glue this on. Just put dots at the joints. Get a block ready. And we're just going to put that on there and let it dry for a minute. So we can get out our sequins. I use both of the Celebration, the metallic twine and sequins, and the Peaceful Poppy sequins. Okay, so that should be ready. Now what I did was I used my mini dimensionals. And when we cut out that honeycomb, there were those gold pieces left behind. So we're just going to take a few of those and insert them. So I take a mini, pop it on the back. And then just pop it in there. It's not necessary to use dimensionals, but for me, I find it to be the easiest application. And you can put them all in, you can put just a few in, totally up to you. So the way that I adhered the hive was I just put glue on here. Put the hive on there, and again took those same D blocks to let it set. We're done with those dimensionals. So this time I said we're gonna let the bees be. We'll have it so that they're part of the shaker as well. But I am going to have this queen bee attached. So we'll put her on a glue dot. Now the next thing we have to do is we need to cut our stitch nested die out of this. So let's just put some washi tape on there. Okay, so we can hang on to that insert for another project. Now we'll throw this through our embossing folder. This part is totally optional. I just felt like it gave it some nice texture. Okay, so there is that piece. Forgot to mention, we also need foam strips. Now, the way that I adhered my window sheet, which is far too big right now, it needs to be 4 3/4 by 3. So the way that I adhered this was I used snail, because I find that when I use Tombow on, oh, it slid a little bit, that's okay. When I use Tombow, it slides too much. So just take some snail around the edges. And pop that on down. So it's starting to come together. So I think because this slid on me, I'm just going to take that little bit out. There we go. So let's put our queen bee just down here. There's a little bit showing at the bottom, but I'm not concerned. So now we need to adhere our foam strips to this piece. And if you've never seen a shaker card before, this is like building a dam, I guess, to keep all of the sequins in, because you don't want to shake it and have all of your sequins going everywhere. So you can pull these off now. And I use my embossing buddy and just kind of go around the edges because I don't want my sequins sticking to the sides. So now we can just pop on some sequins, put in some bees. I have a feeling these are going to get stuck underneath, but I think what I'll do is put 2 on glue dots and then have the other ones freestyling around the card. Oops. Okay, so the rest of them are just loose in there. Now, I don't want any of the red sequins. I want the black, the gold, and the clear. And these black sequins are incredible. They are matte. There's no gloss to them whatsoever. It's gorgeous. So with the clear ones, I do a couple of the little blooms. I know you can't see the clear ones on there, but they do add a little something to the shaker. I already know what's going to happen. I'm going to end up with nothing but the red ones left because I'll have used all the black and gold. Okay, that should be good. We'll get that red one that snuck in there out. And now we will go to this package. This is free with a $60 order. And it comes with the metallic twine. You can't go wrong. I think I've already ordered 3 of these. Well, not ordered, but I've spent enough and redeemed enough to get at least 3 of these. I knew as soon as I saw them they'd be popular. It's a consumable and it's free. Okay, so I believe we are ready to assemble. So let's put this on. Now I should mention, this one, you want to keep in mind where your window is going to be. You don't want to put something where it's going to be outside of the viewable area, like I did with this guy. So I'm just going to move that glue dot and we'll move him right above the hive. There we go. When you're building a shaker card, you always want to be working on the base. You don't want to put it all in your window and then have to flip it over quickly. I think I went too far over on that one side. But it's down now. Oh, I missed a bee. So there we go. We have the bees shaking. We have the sequins shaking. You could put more in there. You could put less in there. It's totally up to you. You can see I totally moved when I did the side. You could even put some of these in there. Last thing to do is our sentiment. So we just need a scrap of Whisper White, which I happen to have right here. And like I said, I am using the Wiggle Worm stamp sets. I'm going to use I Love Being With You and You Make My Heart Flutter, but you could use the sentiments from the Honeybee stamp set. They are cute, but none as quite as lovey as these ones, so I like it. So I'm just going to use Memento. You're probably starting to wonder when the Memento ink was going to come in. It's for this part. I'll keep that open. So You Make My Heart Flutter goes on the inside of the card. And you could stamp a little bee or something in there. As a matter of fact, let's do that. Get the honeybee back out. We'll use that small little one. And because I have Memento out, I'm just going to use that. And I mean, it's a bee, right? Oh, did you see that? Okay, so if that ever happens to you, just make a Whisper White insert to go over the spot where the stamp dropped. I don't know that that's ever happened to me, but I've gone so far, I'm not going to stop now. So if that happens, just put in an insert to cover it up. Make sure that your seams are closed. You don't have a gap. Sometimes the sequins can sneak in there and you don't want to compromise. So right now that B that I use the glue dot on is keeping that from closing. But just give it a once over to make sure you don't have any sequins that are keeping it open. You can always run a line of glue if you want to get rid of that. But I'm distracted. Let's just punch this out. And the next step is completely optional. I just felt like it gave it a little more kick. And I don't have my sponge daubers within reach, so I get lazy and I just outline with my Stampin' Write markers. Because a sponge dauber border on this would be nice too, but I'd have to get up and go to my cupboard and find the right color, open up the ink pad. I'm teasing, but it is a good option when you're being lazy. So with this, you could pop it up on dimensionals, but there's already quite a bit of height just from the foam strip. So I just run a little line of glue, put it there, make sure it's still on the card base. I thought about putting it at the bottom, but I didn't want to cover up the queen. She can't be covered, right? And then if you have a situation where it's gone too far, take a long pair of scissors and just snip your sides. If you use small scissors like the snips or the scissors that I was using, you're not going to get a nice straight, nice cut. So just take a long pair of scissors, and there we go. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the difference. So this one has the bees adhered, so it's just the sequins moving around, and this one has the bees moving around. So there's a lot more movement in that one. If you need any of the supplies that I have used in this card, or any supplies, and you live in Canada or not, and are not working with a demonstrator, I would love to earn your business. Celebration is always a great time to shop. For every $60 you spend, you can choose an item from the Celebration catalog. There are $60 price points. There are $120 price points. There are even ones. The Bundle of Hope is a $180 purchase. Celebration is also the best time to consider joining my Crafted AF team if you have ever thought about purchasing the starter kit, which is the best deal in the catalog, best deal in the Stampin' Up! World. Celebration is always a great time. You still choose $165 for $135, but you will get this fantastic little paper cutter, you'll get a DSP sampler, and you get to choose a free stamp set of your choosing. So I always suggest that you go for one of the pricier ones that you may not buy otherwise. When you join my team, you get access to, all my online classes for free. So Stamping Society, Creativity Without Borders, and my new Pretty AF group. That is a huge value. There are just so many benefits and perks. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. stampedaf@gmail.com. I would be happy to answer any questions you have. If you haven't subscribed, please consider hitting that big subscribe button below, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye.